Good afternoon, and you're very welcome to episode 4 of the third season of the Leitrim GAA podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. I'm Breifne Earley, and for the next maybe hour or so, we're going to be chatting all things Leitrim football. We've had the company of former Leitrim and Manor Hamilton Championship winning boss Shane Ward will be with us in just a few moments. We'll be putting to him his thoughts on how the season has gone for Leitrim, but also on the club scene at home. Of course, currently managing Derrygonnelly in Fermanagh, so he's keeping up the trend of us chatting to Leitrim people or former Leitrim people involved with teams in the county who are now plying their wares elsewhere on the managerial hot seats. We've gone to Longford, we've been in Roscommon, now with Victor Fermanagh and with Derrygonnelly and Shane Ward. We're chatting to him in just a few moments about the Tailteann Cup campaign, how he likes the structure compared to maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago when he was involved, and all of the changes that have happened, and as well, I suppose, a little bit about the performance of Leitrim through that championship. He'll tell us all about that later on from his point of view. We'll also take a look at the Masonite Football League Division 1, 2 and 3 campaigns. Of course, full round of games last weekend, also a full round of games this evening in the county. We'll chat through some of those results over the next couple of minutes with Shane. But first of all, maybe let's take a quick look at those results from across the county from last weekend, the 4th of June. The results across the bottom of the table down there, of course, Tailteann Cup beaten in that, but the Auckland 13 points to 212 to Aughwillan. Mohill 1-9, Leitrim Gales 13 points, St Mary's Kiltard 3-10, Fina 7 points. And finally, Ballinamore Sean Hessens received a walkover against Glencar Manor Hamilton. We'll chat to Shane about that, of course, a former manager of the Glencar Manor Hamilton club. We'll hear his thoughts on a team not being able to fulfil a fixture in Division 1 of the Masonite Senior Football League in the county. In Division 2, another draw for Kilturban 13 points, Ballinaglara 13 points, Dromahare 2-12, Havas 1-9. Melbourne Gales 1-8, 2-17 to Allen Gales, and Carrigallen and Annaduff a 2-point win for them, 2-11 to 3-6 in favour of Carrigallen in Division 2. In Division 3, Glenfarn, Kiltyclar 2-6, Bornacoola 3-point win, 1-12 for them, while Estlin had 2 points to spare, 2-13 to 2-11 over Drumkieran and Drumreilly. They fell to Gortletcher 4-12 to 7 points. The final score in that particular game. We'll take a quick look at the league tables. If we just bring them up here in Division 1 of the Masonite Football League, we have St Mary's top of the table alongside Leitrim Gales after 2 wins from their first 2 outings. Mohill, Glencar Manor, Aughwillan and Ballinamore just on 1 win from 2 games, while Auckland and Fina will be hoping to pick up their first wins of the campaign. They're in action tonight against Ballinamore and Leitrim Gales respectively. So it'll be interesting to see how those games go later on this evening. In terms of the top scorers, again, for the games that we have reports in from, Reardon O'Rourke still top of the charts in Division 1, 13 points for him ahead of Ronan Kennedy, and Stephen Goldrick 1 further back from him. A couple then on 9, Ronan Gordon and Donica Devani. They're on 9 points so far in this year's league, with Conor Dolan, Luke Murphy and Ewan Tracy and Ben Guckian all over the 6-point mark at the moment in the division. So some interesting tallies so far. Of course, some of those players only having the 1 game with that Manor and Ballinamore game not actually taking place last weekend. In terms of the clean sheets, we did have a couple this weekend. Killian Gaffey and Sean Reynolds, they shared one. Half-time substitution there for St Mary's, and Porrick tied with his first clean sheet of the season as well in their game against Leitrim Gales. Despite the defeat, did manage to keep a clean sheet. In terms of Division 2, Allen Gales, Ballinaglara and Carrigallen all top the table in what is looking to be a fairly draw-heavy division so far. They're all on 3 points, 3 teams further back on 2, Dromahare, Havas and then Kilturban yet to record a win or a defeat. 2 draws for them, as we mentioned in the roundup. 2 draws for them. They find themselves in 6th place, but a solid start for them in this year's campaign. Ended off with a single point. And Melbourne Gales just struggling to find their feet in Division 2 this year. We've seen disappointment for them. There's been a change of manager, I believe, in Kinloch as well. So plenty to see from them over the coming weeks. In terms of top scorers, Derek Riley still top of the charts there, 210 for him, 16 points in total. Darren Short, 5 behind on 11, while Colin Moran of Allen Gales, 1-7 for him. He's 6 points behind the leader in that particular division. Enna Maguire on 8, Niall McCabe, Shamie McMorrow, Barry McQueenie and Paul Simpson all keeping pressure on the boys at the top. They have 7 points each to the names after the first 2 rounds of games. In terms of the clean sheets, a couple extra in this division. Fergal Martin, Pádraig Flanagan and Noel Gill on the list for Division 2 as it stands at the moment. In Division 3, Gortletra top of the charts there. Massive result for them at the weekend. They put a big score up on Drumreilly, while Bornacoola, they are sitting pretty in second place, just 1 points difference at the moment. Of course, those two teams do face each other in the league campaign yet, so they will play tonight in Gortletra. So the best luck to all the teams that play tonight, but of course those two are looking for maybe early honours in terms of where they might be looking at a league title campaign in that Division 3 grade. Drumkieran, they are idle, so they play no game, while Esslin and Drumreilly and Glenfarne, Kilty make the journey to Clune in Division 3 this afternoon. We'll talk about those fixtures a little bit later in the show. In terms of the top scorers, we have David Feeney has overtaken Conor Byrne at the top of the table. 14 points for him, 2-8 in total for that Drumkieran man, while Colin McCauley, his teammate, joins Byrne on 13 points in joint second place in that particular scoring chart at the moment. A couple of other names that crop up there as well. Jamie Quinn, of course, Damien Moran on 11, Nigel Maguire from Riley on 11, and then we've got back towards Francis Flynn. He's got 8 points for Gortletra. Brian Higgins and Anthony Mulligan also there with Cian Mallon on 6 points. They're the top scorers in Division 3 of the Masonite Leitrim Football League. The clean sheets, just the 2 so far. Daniel Farrell of Bornacoola and Niall Tiernan of Gortletra. Of course, facing off against each other tonight. If they both play, they will hopefully be hoping to add to that. Who else will be on that list come tomorrow? We do not know just yet. That is the results and fixtures and standings and all the statistics from last weekend. Of course, you can check on all of these in more or less real time on match night by midnight tonight. All the stats we get in will be updated when we get them in from the various games around the county. So do check that out, finalwhistle.ie, for all of the statistics on all of that. But anyway, enough out of me. Let's hear from Shane Ward when we got sat down during the week to talk about a load of different things, but most importantly, Leitrim's campaign in the Tailteann Cup, the restructuring of how the competition looks right now, and his thoughts on how everything is going within and at inter-county level, within the county and at inter-county level as well. Let's hear what myself and Shane had to chat about just a couple of days ago. So Shane Ward, you're very, very welcome to the programme.
Hi, Breifne, how are you?
Great, I'm great. I've been trying to have you on for a long time, but it's probably the first time we've had you on in a couple of years, I'm going to say, because you haven't really been directly involved in the club game here. You've been busy over in Derry Donnelly, but of course, former Leitrim manager, also manager of the Manor Hamilton side that won the senior championship. I want to say 2020, but it could be 2019 at this stage.
2019, yeah, 2019.
So listen, we are at that stage of the season. We've just wrapped up the inter-county season. You're well familiar with that experience yourself back in the day. And we're looking now towards the club season. But first, we might just, before we get into the club stuff, let's have a chat about the Tailteann Cup and I suppose where that went and how it worked out for us. We know the perennial problems, population, all that stuff that gets trotted out every year when we do finish a season. Your thoughts on how the competition went?
Yeah, I've enjoyed it so far. The spread of games has been good, and the different teams playing different teams has been healthy. It's one of the things in the National Football League, when you're down Division 4, generally by and large, you're playing a lot of the same oppositions every winter. So it tends to be, your Londons, your Watfords, your Wexfords, those type of teams. So it's a welcome opportunity to play other teams, maybe at a similar level, which is healthy. And I've enjoyed watching them spread of games. And I think by some of the results, you can see the nature of the week on week, not having huge amount of time to prepare for oppositions has thrown up some good results and made it, very healthy and competitive for most teams.
Like when you look at the format of it, you look at teams like I'm thinking now specifically of London over the weekend, came within a couple of seconds of snatching a last 16 or a preliminary quarterfinal spot from Laois, and just different permutations. A lot of these groups, even though people were kind of poo-pooing the idea of saying, "Oh, you play so many games just to get rid of 3 or 4 or 5 teams," but it did actually create that little bit of excitement over the weekend. Nearly every team had something to play for.
Absolutely, and the telling of how the season went won't be until you kind of sit down with the players, maybe after the season's finished, to see how they felt. The Tailteann Cup went, and the GAA gets a bit of feedback from the player population within that. There has been a little bit of gas let off about the fact that there's so many games for so many few teams being knocked out. But if I'm thinking from an inter-county manager perspective, and thinking from say a Leitrim perspective or from Manor perspective or a Wexford perspective, there's 2 things you're looking for when you finish the National League, and that's done and dusted. Is you're looking for opportunities to play at championship level on a regular basis, and you're looking to play teams where you're going to be competitive. And it's been widely highlighted in the last couple of weeks that managers have come out and said that it's been really positive to the point that all of the squads have stuck together. And I think that's a reflection on not the fact that I think players get poor airtime on this sometimes, that after National League campaign finishes in the old system and we played a championship match and players stepped away from the senior inter-county squad, generally, from my experience having conversations with players over time, a lot of it was because of the lengthy breaks between one game and the next. So, for example, in years past, Leitrim might have had a game and Connacht got knocked out, and then you could have 6, 7, maybe 8 weeks to wait for your backdoor game. And for a lot of players who'd given a lot of time over the previous couple of months, for various reasons like careers, opportunities to go traveling, work placements, everything in that mixed bag, that 6 or 8 week window was just too long. But now we're seeing people are playing games every week, every 2 weeks, which is more appetizing, and people are putting their plans aside and saying, hold on, we have an opportunity to play 3 good championship games here, possibly 4, possibly get into a quarterfinal, semi-final where the big knockout games come. And players are thinking, this is something exciting to look forward to, and there's progression in that. And as an inter-county manager, I remember lamenting at that time in 2016, I think it was, about the point that, lots of other counties were getting lots of more opportunities to play their players at high-end championship games. And now with the Tailteann Cup this year, I think that's been the GAA's thinking, is get players playing championship games week on week to keep the interest there, but also give them teams opportunities, prepare, trial various things over a championship campaign, and not be just waiting on a one-hit game,
Yeah, because that's something that always struck me was we see the likes of Mayo, Kerry, Dublin, Tyrone, they get 4, 5, 6 games a season, particularly when the Super 8s came in and there was that 3-game knockout phase as well. They get in the heat of summer battle, they really get to kind of harness that atmosphere, that experience. And Leitrim, plus maybe another 20 or 24 counties, never quite managed to get that. This season, we've played 4 championship matches. We've never played more than that. Like the maximum Leitrim has ever played in 1 year is 4. Even in '94, we got the All-Ireland semi-final. It was 4 games. I think we've only played 4 games this year, last year, 94, and maybe 2013, 2014. I think we played 4 games as well. It doesn't happen that often.
No, and one of the big things was at the time when we look back was if you have a group of players at 22, 23 and look at their championship experience history, up until maybe 2018, 2019, I think it changed, but the county minors would have played 1 game, 1 championship game, and got straight knocked out. The under 21s would have played 1 game and possibly progress, or it was a straight knockout, it was 50-50 game. So you could have players potentially breaking into the Leitrim senior team at 22, 23, having played 1 county minor championship game, 1 or 2 under 21 games, and stepping in then to face a Galway or a Mayo or Roscommon on a Connacht final, on a Connacht semi-final or quarter-final day in Carrick or wherever. So that they had, to me, that was a huge disadvantage in the system, that they didn't get more experience to play at that level. Now, the argument is, obviously, you win those games, you progress. But even in Connacht, where there's a small number of teams, the probability of progressing, even according to Leinster. So when I was in charge of Leitrim under 21s, we looked at even the Leinster teams. Like you could a run of 3 or 4 games, Leinster Championship. We were playing teams at a similar level, and you could, you could get 2 or 3 games back to back, and if you had them for 2 or 3 seasons, get 9 championship games. Which was I thought was a massive advantage. So it's been a welcome addition where they've gone to the round robin system at minors. The 20s still needs a bit of work, that championship, because they're trying to fit it into areas of the season where it can work. but I don't believe that they've found that area of the season yet.
Some of those Wednesday night games or Tuesday night games through the summer when lads are off to college or whatever seem to work really, really well, but they've moved away from that in recent years.
Yeah, it seems that way, and I don't know why that is, but it was, I suppose, appetizing to that age group. But then you take into, a good under-20 player could be very central to your club team, your club championship ambitions. He could be central to your inter-county senior squad. He could play, be playing a role, maybe a role off the bench, but playing certainly a role in the first 26 or first 25 players. So it's very hard.
Sigerson.
Yeah, absolutely, and Sigerson, and that's and that is one of the things I've seen this year. Like, is there's been a bit of debate about counting under 20 players playing with the county 20s or playing with the senior squad, and that a wee bit of debate around that. But I think it's really important that young players at 18, 19, 20 get a chance to experience the Sigerson Cup and get to challenge themselves and play against players from other counties, and also get to play with players at their own age group. I think it's really, really important to development, because when they're 25 or 26, that's the experiences they fall back on based on what they face at that point. So the experience of the Sigerson Cup under 20s, it's invaluable, really.
You touched on 20s and senior eligibility, but one of the highlights of this season has been the emergence of Barry McNulty. He's been knocking on the door. His name's been mentioned a few times. We finally saw him in the heat of championship action this year. You know him quite well from the day job in St. Clair's there in Manor Hamilton. Your thoughts on how he's progressed over the last few years?
Yeah, I was delighted to see him progressing, and really quickly after he'd done his leaving cert, he just jumped on and he progressed really, really quickly. He had obviously a bad injury for us in his leaving cert year at school, so it held him back from playing Connacht College's first a little bit, and we did reasonably well, but we still missed him around the middle of the park or around the 11th position, and having come back from a very serious rehab, maybe 3-4 months, he did really, really well to put himself straight into the senior county squad. I've been at a couple of the games and he's played really well, and he positions himself really well for a youngster. He nearly plays with somebody that has a huge amount of experience, the way he positions himself on the pitch and the way he makes the most of a situation. We've seen him get a couple of goals this year and that, which is kind of uncanny of a midfielder who would have played most of his games at midfield for underage. So I think he's done really well. He's been a welcome addition, and he will go from strength to strength because he has the physique, and knowing him quite well, he does certainly have the character, and he's really, really good attitude. Like, football and sport to him is kind of number one, and I know he'll be there for a while.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people excited about what he might have to offer to Leitrim over the next few years and beyond. In terms of yourself, of course, not involved in the club scene in Leitrim anymore with Derry Gonley, as we mentioned. We might talk about that later on. But what's your I suppose, perspective on the club scene in the county at the moment? Of course, Carrick County champions. They've also just gone and won the Spring League as well. They're up and running nicely in the league. The northern teams up there from school and club football probably a little bit better than the others, but at the same time, you have a good knowledge of the club scene around. Who's standing out to you as the ones to watch for this year?
Well, I suppose the teams in general. What I'm hoping for, looking in from the outside, having been involved with Leitrim, I'm looking for real competitive league and championship campaigns from all teams. I think it's really important. Reports have it that Carrick are quite strong and that they've done a lot of work, which they have done. I know underage, and they have young players coming through, and there's a lot of talk about that. But for the good of Leitrim football, I hope the chasing pack, as it would be if they're county champions from last year, Carrick, that the chasing pack have stepped it up a gear in hot pursuit of matching them or even trying to beat them. In this year's campaign, I think it's really important. The teams that got to the last four last year, your Finas, your Leitrim Gales, those type of teams are thinking, right, we were within a whisker of beating them last year. Let's turn that 1 point or 2 point loss, or that penalty shootout loss, into a victory this year in real time. So I'm really hoping for the greater good that happens, and that other clubs, younger players, step up to the plate. I know there's a couple of other clubs as well, like Manor Hamilton, a couple of young players coming up, and they have a good bit of experience. They've been relatively successful, and they would have competed with them, like the Carrick and that, on the way up. So they will be looking to establish themselves as senior footballers as well, along with a couple of older statesmen, just to support them along the way. Fina, I think, Fina are a team that are coming or thereabouts. They have a very experienced management team in there at the minute. So, you'd be hoping that those teams will challenge, make it, a good top 4, a good top 6 in the championship, that there's not much between those teams and that it's really competitive.
One you didn't mention, Mohill, of course, beaten in the final last year, beaten by Leitrim Gales, so they've had the edge on just in the semi-final over the last 2 seasons. Leitrim Gales beat them in a league game at the weekend. How much you can read into that, I take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, because both teams without county players at the moment, Mohill probably more so than Leitrim Village. But it's a good sign from Leitrim Gales. Would you be worrying for Mohill, or will they really be kind of writing that off when their players are all fully back for them?
No, I was just thinking about this today, just in regard to a league campaign coming in the championship. I suppose in Leitrim we kind of have a habit of sometimes saying, well, if they're without the county players, the teams will bounce back. But I think from a management perspective of a club team in Leitrim, it's really important that you're hitting your posts in the league along the way. For a team that hope to contest maybe a county final or win a county title, it's really important that you're putting the teams that you want to compete against away in the league. Regardless of who they have, who they're missing, you're still building up that mentality, that strong mentality that we can compete with these teams, we can level with these teams, and we can beat these teams. So for the like of Leitrim Gales to beat Mohill with or without county players, to them that will be a really progressive step. If they can beat them away from home, even better. But again, it just builds that mentality that you're building. It gives a bit of competitive nature in training. It gives a bit of hunger to the players too, and a bit of belief. And, people sometimes write that off thinking that, it doesn't matter. But if you're a team that's looking to win a title for the first time in recent times, those are big markers to hit in the league. And they're really important games. And managers will look at those games and say, listen, if we're beating them in the league, that'll put us in a good position if we're in a knockout game in championship, and we'll take them to the wire, So, with regard to Mohill, they have maybe lost 2 or 3 players recently to going away travelling for the summer. I'm not sure they're going to return for the championship or not. But they'll always be thereabouts, and they're competitive. The one thing Mohill will have is that kind of that fighting nature, competitive nature, that when they're in that one-off game, they have a habit of pulling through and getting out of there, which is a skill in itself, really. But I would be wary of them from the point of view that they don't become too dependent on 2 or 3 players. I do like to see teams that they like your Leitrim Gales and Phoenix, they're not totally dependent on 2 or 3 to pull them through, that they have a nice spread of players, and that it's a really team ethic and team effort. And those teams, for me, if they're at themselves, should always win out.
Yeah, we touched on all 4 of the semi-finalists from last year, but Ballinamore are in that mix as well. We haven't really talked about them. New manager there, Ray Logan's taken on the role. Reasonable start. They drew their first game out of the gate. I think they played I can't remember how they lost the first game to St. Mary's by a couple of points, 5 points, but it was a really impressive performance. They got a walkover last week, which I suppose even to get the 2 points, you're still not happy if you're not getting a game in at this stage of the season.
No, you need the game, yeah. And, I'm delighted to see Ray Logan there in charge of Ballinamore, somebody local and back into the club base again. That will certainly give them a bounce this year, having someone to get in around them and in that knows them well, and will get them back on track again. Like Ballinamore, always formidable outfit, and they got their championship in 2020, so that'll give them huge confidence. Having won a championship in recent times does give you that kind of swagger, that bit of confidence when you do get to a knockout game, that you can back it up again. And they're always going to be thereabouts. Like, they have some great leaders in their team. Young Luke Murphy, I've worked with before, always showed great signs of leading the line, and he has done really well in the last couple of years. Your Shane Morans and that kind of thing have been really good. Your Liam Ferguson's and that, like, those type of players just don't go away. They're consistently good all the time, and that's what teams need through a season. They need players who are going to be consistently good and there on the day, giving you that 8.5, 9 out of 10 every single day. And Ballinamore have those type of players, and I've always said that of them. They've been very easy to work with over time, and that I'd like to see them get over the line in 2020, that they got their championship, because they have been hammering for a good while at it, and they will, with new manager in charge, bound to get a bounce.
Just the 30 years or so, in terms of knocking out the door. In terms of, I have to ask you about, I know you're local there now, you're up in the Manor region, but Manor not fielded at the weekend. I know there was a social engagement that took away a large chunk of their squad, and I get that people have lives outside of football. Yeah. Your thoughts on not fielding a team, even if it's a reserve set of players?
Oh yeah, it's important, I suppose. In a fixture, you always try and fulfill the fixture. I suppose it's tradition and it's part of who we are. We always try and as clubs, you always try and fulfill the fixture. But it can at this time of year is very tricky. It's very tricky. You have young students finishing exams in college, maybe finishing off work placements, part of their college courses. You have young students, doing the leaving cert and maybe taking a week or two before the leaving cert just to prepare for it and so on. And then you can just have a social thing, a wedding, something like that can happen. And you can lose a bulk of players, especially, I find in the rural clubs, especially where you have lots of people who are related. It's very hard to say, your brothers can go and your cousins can't. And I've been there. I've seen it. I've seen it at home in Donegal. I've seen it everywhere. It can fall that way. And it can be very difficult to navigate your way through it. If you happen to get the game pulled forward or put back, it works in your favour. Everything is fine. But if you don't, for whatever reason, it can be very tricky. And I know, a large cohort at one time can just be unavailable, and that's just just the nature of ball. At the same time, you do like to try and fulfill the fixture. You do. But obviously, they tried very hard, I'd imagine, and it just didn't happen.
I don't know the details, but it's one of these situations where sometimes life just takes over and you don't really have much control in that situation. But it's disappointing to see in terms of a competition integrity, but it is what it is. Going forward, any thoughts on, you might have much knowledge of what's going on at the lower grades in the Division 2 or Division 3 of the competition, but some exciting there, any former students or any former players you've worked with county squads that you kind of keep an eye on when it comes to the intermediate grade? I know your neighbours up there, Melvin Gales, are in the intermediate grade this year. Drogheda not very gently put them down in a very exciting finish to the season last year. Yeah. I'm sure they won't thank them for that.
No. Oh yeah, you're always looking to the teams, I suppose, that you've had players on that you've worked with before, but it's just interesting, because I've been looking at it the last couple of weeks, just as the league starts, of interest. It's familiar faces and familiar heads leading the lines for their teams again. You have Colin McCauley racking up good scores in Drumkey here and there. You have the Burns still in operation, Conor Burns still in operation for Esslin. You have your who else was looking at there? I was looking at Kilturbet, probably a good team on their day as well. They can rattle most teams, and they can they're all. If you look at all their fixtures, a lot of the results are very tight all the time, so they can run teams close. Drogheda, just noticed Gary Fowley there, past pupil of our own school there, leading the line on your top scorers there for Drogheda there the last couple of weeks as well. So Joe Cox up in Anna Duff, he'll have plenty of work done there as well. So there are lots of teams there that are kind of very hard to divide and very hard to separate. And by the league fixtures there and the league results, even in the springtime there and in the last game, there's not much between any of them. 3-4 points separates a lot of them,
Yeah, it's all very tight. No more than the National League, the All-County Football League, the Masonite All-County Football League does tend to throw up some nice clashes. Of course, Ballinaglera are not a million miles from you as well. That's well, I suppose it's not near you, but it's in the north of the county. We tend to throw everybody into North Leitrim. I know I'm guilty of it myself at times. They're running quite well in the competition so far as well. 3 points from 4 in the Division 2 of the Championship. What's your own situation? You're obviously out of Leitrim football for the last 2 years with Derry Donnelly. How's life treating for Manor?
Yeah, good. I suppose that after 2019, it wasn't part of a plan. Now it just took a bit of time out of managing and coaching. Just decided to take a break. There was a big push for that championship in 2019 at Manor, and just with the young boys at home and that, just decided to take a break. And just coincidentally, nothing really planned around it. Got an opportunity to work with Derry Donnelly, and just did a bit of work with them, and found that there was a great hunger in them and a good group, and just coincidentally happened. I said, you know what, I'll give you a dig out and work with you for a while and see how it goes. And we're just entering into the third year now, so really happy there, really content in the point that we're making progress in working together, and that's always a good sign. What you're looking for a group is that you're kind of always feel that you're pushing them on a little bit further. And I'll regularly get feedback with them on that and try and see, can we push the levels a little bit. And for now, going into your third year, you have to be pushed a little bit harder and feel as if you're making progress. So we are. They have a good group of lads, again, a rural club, rural community, and at the minute it's just fitting. it's just fitting, and I'm enjoying working with them. I didn't know any of them personally before I went there, so that has been easy because it creates that kind of professional work ethic. And again, it's not far from here. It's an easy run over. It wasn't something I looked for, but it just coincidentally happened, and I'm really enjoying it.
3 wins in the group stage last year, beaten in the semi-final by a single point to Enniskillen, who went on to win it relatively comfortably in the county final. That must give you great hope that you can maybe take a bit of silverware back this season.
Oh yeah, the boys won't be happy last year. I suppose they had 7 out of 8 in a row there in Fermanagh county titles, so they were very much in the hunt again last year. And just as you say, lost by a point in semi-final to a very competitive Enniskillen team who were well prepped on the day, and we just couldn't find that last bit of energy in the last 5 or 6 minutes. We controlled the game for large parts and controlled the second half for a large part, but just couldn't find that. Just we scored just to get us level, to put us back in the driving seat. And if we'd got back level, I think we would have seen it out. But in fairness, Enniskillen put up a great battle, tactically very astute and very good, and just wouldn't let us level up, and we just couldn't get there. So, when those kind of things happen, it can be positive though, it can be progressive, because it takes a group back to base again, and gives them a good focus for the following year. So you'd be confident again that give it a good push this year. Maybe they've learned that lesson from last year, and they'll take that and bring it forward this year.
Yeah, there's always a good crop of Derry Donnelly influences in Leitrim football, so it's nice to kind of go in the opposite direction as well. Well, listen, Shane, thanks for joining us. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how things are going from your perspective. It's nice to kind of to hear from people who aren't necessarily stuck in the nitty gritty of it anymore, but know the lay of the land. So very nice to that. I bumped into you randomly, I suppose, the other evening up in the showgrounds at the Clash of the Rovers, so it was nice to kind of just catch up and for you to join me this week and have a little chat about all things Leitrim football. Your thoughts for who might win the championship? Put your neck on the block. I suppose you have to say Manor if you want to walk into town at any stage over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and if I want to stay in my own house, I have to say Manor. I think if I say anything else, it'll be sleeping outside. Although it's good enough weather, maybe it could be a bit of peace to get outside. Okay, I suppose Carrick are the team to beat, and that's going to be tough for them, because I know from in that position, like the target's on their back big time, and every team that goes out to play them, it's going to be like the championship final. And it's dangerous when you have teams go out to play and teams have the attitude about we've nothing to lose here, especially in a one-off game, that it's Carrick, their favourites, they're driving the standard here, so we've nothing to lose, and that can be a hard position to be in as Carrick, because they really have to be at it every single game. And when you're in that mindset that you have to be at it, when you're not at it, can they actually dig it out is the real question. And I'm wondering that too. I'll be interested to watch, because we talk about these young players not coming up, but will they have the firepower and that grit to see it out when they're not at it in a county semi-final or county quarter-final game, when the opposition are raining on them with nothing to lose and going for it? And that's going to be a really interesting watch, and if that does happen and it do come true, it'll be great for Leitrim football, because we need more games like that where the intensity of the championship is really, really high. And our county players need that they're at their max and that they're put to the wall every single game they go out, because that's great experience to be bringing forward to a Tailteann Cup campaign or National League campaign, for how to win games in the last 10 or 15 minutes. Really, really important development. So I hope our championship brings that. Carrick are a team to beat. I mentioned earlier on Leitrim Gales and Fianna were against them last year. Mohill will always bring the thunder when they come. Ballinamore hopefully will bring a real good assault as well. But I'm hoping that the games will be really, really feisty and really tight, because that will only bring our players on.
Yeah, just looking at the fixtures for the weekend ahead, I'll just give them to you there because you might not have them to hand. But Mary's playing Mohill, Fianna play Leitrim Gales, Ahowillan, Manor Hamilton, and Auckland and Ballinamore. So some pretty decent rivalry there across all of them, even a little bit of local between Auckland and Ballinamore. If you were picking one to go to, where would you be on Saturday evening?
I'd probably like to go. I suppose that, listen, they're all going to be competitive. It's good to go to a derby game like Auckland and Ballinamore, because there'll be a bit of fire in it. I'd obviously like to go watch the Manor boys play as well. But any of the games, really, Breifne, to be honest with you, any of the games should be competitive and they should be tight. It'll be interesting to go and see them and see where teams are at. As I say, and I keep saying it, I hope those teams are pushing the levels and really taking the challenge that Carrick are putting down. Like everyone in the county's talking about Carrick. How many will they put back to back? And for me, if I was managing team 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 in that list there, I'd be thinking, let's have a shot at these guys. Even in a league game, I'd be putting them to the wire. I'd be trying my best to see how they react, see how they respond to various things in the pitch and that. And, every team will get a chance to that in the league, and they should take it. They should take it and just see where they're at and maybe take stock then and see how they can maybe fire on an old challenge to them.
We'll see what Saturday brings. Shane, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll see, I'm sure, over the course of the summer.
No bother, Breifne. Thanks a million. Talk to you soon.
Shane Ward chatting to me just the other evening ahead of this weekend's games in the Masonite League Division 1, 2 and 3, of course. First game thrown in just a little while. All the games 7 o'clock, 7:45 and an 8 p.m. throw in as well. Plenty of stuff. Of course, the ladies are in action this weekend too. They start their All-Ireland intermediate campaign against Kildare tomorrow in Abbott Money Park. Sean McDermott in Carrick and Shannon. Well worth getting along to that game if you can at all. All the ticket information and the stream information is available if you check out. If you Google it, you'll find that we'll put the details on our socials, and I'm sure the ladies, LGFA in the county, will be promoting that as well. But please do get out and support the girls. I know they'll appreciate it. They have a big task. They're facing Kildare, who reached the final of Division 3. So a tough task tomorrow, but one that I'm sure our girls will be more than capable of dealing with. Just to run through those fixtures again before we wrap up. The fixtures for this evening, starting in Division 1, we have Fianna and Leitrim Gales at 7 p.m. Ahowillan and Glencar Manor Hamilton daily battle in Ahowillan at 7 p.m. as well. Ballinamore make the short journey to Aucknasheelan, while Muhull and St Mary's will do battle in Park Navenmure in Carrick and Shannon. That game a little bit later than the other, 7:45, but the weather nice and warm expected for most of the evening. Well worth getting out to one of those games if you can at all. If Division 2 is more your scene, Anaduff host Melvin Gales in Stanley Cox Park at 7. Allen Gales and Dromahare will do battle. Ballinaglara host Carrigallen, while Ohavas and Kiltubber will meet over in Ohavas. All those games in Division 2 at 7 p.m. While in Division 3, Estlin make the trip to Drumreilly, Bornacoola and Gortletcher have that top of the table clash at 7 o'clock, both those games, while Clune and Glenfarr and Kilty Clogher will meet at 8 p.m. over in Clune. So plenty to keep, wherever your interest is today, to keep you active through the next couple of hours as you prepare for those games later on this afternoon. We might just give a quick shout out to our sponsors and our supporters from across the county. Of course, Leitrim GAA, who are proud partners of this particular broadcast, but also we have our individual club sponsors. In Allen Gales, we have Centra, Gibbons of Centra, Henry's Haven, Henry Sorahan there, and Drumshanbo Credit Union, while Ahowillan, we're very thankful to QMT Contracts, who support our coverage of Ahowillan in the other clubs. Some clubs still waiting sponsors. If you don't want to know more about that, do get in touch with us at Final Whistle. For Drumahare, it's XL, Leonard's XL in the main street in Drumahare, while Drumkieran are supported by Nearby, Clark's Butchers, Davit's Bar and David Plan and Design Limited, as well as Desmond Wynne Auctioneers and Livestock Valuer. Fianna supported by Glahini and Co Accountants, Quinn's Bar and the Beef Bros, while Gurns, McCormick's Mace and Osta W8 Village are sponsoring our coverage of Glencar Manor Hamilton. And finally, Gortletcher supported by JP Clarks of New York, Kiltubber is supported by TNT Talk and Tech in Drumshanbo and HR Solutions. That's Carmen Murphy. Thank you very much for their support there. Leitrim Gales supported by the Barge Steakhouse, McCormick's Mace and Julio's Takeaway and Spirit and Berry and Brew in Muhull, while St Mary's coverage is supported by Ivan Keeney Photography, Flynn's Bar and Sliced Pizza, and the Hive in Carrick on Shannon. That is it for this week. A nice short and sweet one. We like to keep them as short as possible. It's all about the club scene from here on in. On the men's side of the house, of course, the Tailteann Cup coming to a close last week for us with that defeat to Wexford, despite how it looked at coming into the closing stages of the game. We just didn't have the ability to get across the line, and it is all about the club scene. County players back in action for most of our clubs this evening, and the very best of luck to whoever is playing for those 22 clubs in action tonight, and of course to the ladies who are in action tomorrow in Avon Money Park, Sean McDermott, in that first round. Of course, Louth away. Both of those teams, two will progress from those three into the quarterfinals. Next week, we're going to be looking back at all of this week's games, but also we'll have a little look inside the County Under-16 ladies team. We're going to meet some of them and get a little bit more familiar with some of the players, future stars for the ladies in the county. And we'll be chatting to them on next week's show. Talk to you then.